Hey guys, welcome to shop3d's live demo of the Fuse One SLS 3D printing system from Formlabs. My name is Ken and I'll be your host. I'm one of the co-founders of shop3d.ca, and for those of you tuning in for the first time, shop3d.ca is a premium 3D printing reseller here in Canada. We have showrooms in Toronto and Vancouver, and we really focus on the purchase experience for people who are looking into 3D printers. And today I have a special agenda for us, going over all the details of the Fuse One system for those of you who are interested. And this is a very exciting system that we've had the pleasure of using for the past couple months. This is a system that we've been waiting for a couple years from Formlabs, and it's just completely changed our game in terms of providing 3D printing access. So I have a couple of housekeeping rules. First of all, this is a live stream, so there might be some errors. I might say a couple things wrong, or there might be audio cutouts here and there, but we want to do this live because it's very engaging. It gives you an opportunity to ask us questions that we can answer, and it's extremely fun for us and our guests to do this live for you. And speaking of guests, I have two guests with me today. We have Levi from Formlabs. He's our national account manager over there and 3D printing specialist. And we also have Felix, who's our senior applications specialist. And we're going to be taking you through the system. So that's enough introduction. If you guys have any questions, you can put it in the chat and we'll be sure to answer it. But for now, I want to go straight over to Levi to tell us a little bit about his background, his story, and how he became part of Formlabs and how we met here at shop3d.ca. Levi, take it away.
Terrific, Ken. I really appreciate the introduction there. My name's Levi Smith. I'm the National Channel Account Manager over at Formlabs. I've been with them for about 3 years now. It's been an exciting rocket ship journey so far. Largely 3 years ago when I came to Formlabs, funny enough, my goal was to launch the Fuse One. So here we are. I'm doing it on a live stream with, obviously, shop3d. And Ken, I know we've been together for roughly about 3 years, but again, it's been really exciting in terms of growing this channel. So just a quick introduction on Formlabs, what we're all about. Our goal at Formlabs is to expand access to digital fabrication so anyone can make anything. And really what that comes down to in our book is two key questions. First and foremost, how do we make our products easy to use? And you've seen this a lot with our SLA line. You're going to hear about it today with our SLS line. But there's some great statistics on the SLA side that I always like to mention here. First and foremost, 44% of our users have little to no 3D printing experience before using our SLA printers. And so it's people coming from FPM over to SLA, but it's people that just have no 3D printing experience being able to absorb our technology and start using it quickly. So that's the first question. How do we make our products easy to use? And the second question we constantly ask ourselves is, how do we make it more versatile? When we first launched the Form 2, we had roughly 4 materials available, and that's really how we equate versatility, right? Versatility equates to material versatility. And so we've done a tremendous job. We're not just a printing company, we're also a material development company, and we have over 30 plus resins on the SLA side. We just launched our second material on the SLS side. It's really exciting. So if you guys get a chance, if you've never heard about Formlabs before, go to Netflix, check out Print the Legend. Give you a great backlog story in terms of where we started in the basement from one of our founders in 2011 to where we are today. It's really exciting. And again, really excited to be here with you guys.
Thanks so much, Levi. And also, you mentioned how you're a materials development company as well, and that couldn't be more true because when we initially started with several materials, the capabilities and the quality was certainly there, but by adding all of the different materials that you've done on a consistent basis, it's really improved the user experience, and it's also given us so much more capability than what we originally had. So thank you guys for that. That's wonderful. And I do have one question for you, Levi, before I go to Felix, and that's kind of you've seen the evolution of all the different printers and all the different launches. What's your favorite printer over at Formlabs?
So we talked about this yesterday, Ken. It's debatable right now, right? Because we have so much new technology coming out of Formlabs. You have the Form 3, you have the Form 3L, that large build volume. You have the new Fuse One that's been out. I'm going to have to default to my bread and butter here. It is the Form 3, just because of right now the material versatility, what I have access to. When I get my hands on the Fuse One a little bit more, I think it's going to be an easy win there. But so far at this point in time, I'm going to go with the Form 3.
Sounds good. And Forms 3 is one of our favorites as well. Maybe during this live demo, we're going to be able to convince some people to choose the Fuse 1 as their favorite. But right now, let's go take a look at the Fuse 1. I want to talk to Felix over in our showroom here in Mississauga. He has the Fuse 1 system, so Felix, take it away.
Thanks, guys. So over here on my right, we have the Fuse 1, and on my left, you have the Fuse Sift. Now the Fuse 1, like we said before, it's an SLS 3D printer. SLS stands for Selective Laser Sintering. The way this works is that we have this build chamber right here, and it will lower down layer by layer as the printer deposits powder layer by layer, and then a laser would be sintering that powder. It's very similar to the SLA process on the Form 3, where you go layer by layer until you're done. So not much has changed here, just a little bit of a different material and a different system altogether. The build volume of the Fuse 1 is a nice 165 by 165 by 300 millimeters. And the nice thing is that you don't only have the 2D space to fill your parts, your chamber with, but also the 3D space. A little bit more about that later. And currently you have nylon 12 and the newly released nylon 11 that you can choose from to use on the Fuse 1. And I think right now that's it. We'll go to Ken for some more specs.
Thanks, Felix, for that great overview. I do have a question for you before we move on, and that's about that refresh rate that you kind of mentioned, which was 70% and 50% for nylon 12 and 11. Can you tell me what that means in practical terms? What does the refresh rate mean? Are we refreshing 30% or 70%?
Yeah, for sure. That's a question that we get a lot. So with nylon 12, you have a refresh rate of 30%. What that means is that whatever your build cartridge is, so let's say this build cartridge, it gets filled up with 30% new powder and then 70% used powder. You get that used powder from the Fuse Sift over there, where it will sift through the kind of the printed or unused powder from your prints. It will sift it, make sure that it's good for the Fuse 1, and then the machine will automatically do that 30 to 70% ratio. Now that's on the nylon 12, but on the nylon 11, we actually have a 50-50. So that's 50% new powder, 50% old powder. So to sum that up, or used powder rather, to sum that up, 30% refresh rate means 30% new powder.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Felix. That makes it a lot clearer for me. So right now I want to come back to the studio and talk a little bit about some of the quick specs and highlights of the Fuse 1 system. First of all, just to get some things out of the way, electrical certification, this is going to be no problem with the Fuse 1. It is CUL US certified, so it's ready to use in Canada. And speaking of electrical, Felix, I have a question for you as well. What kind of electrical requirements do we need to set up a Fuse 1 in your studio or in your production facility?
Yeah, that's a good question. So you're just using, here in North America, just a regular 110 volt plug. Now the specific thing that you have to get is a dedicated line for the Fuse 1. You need a 15 amp dedicated line, and that has to do with the power requirements and whatnot. And also you don't want any noise in that line, because if the heaters have any issues heating up or anything like that, you might get warpage or failed prints and stuff like that. And then for the Fuse Sift, you need also another dedicated 15 amp line. And if you do get one of these the explosion-proof vacuums, you actually need a 20 amp dedicated line. So it's still the 110 volt, but you do need to install a couple more breakers to satisfy the power requirements for these machines.
Awesome. And let's talk a little bit about health and safety. This is a good time for Felix to get dressed up and put his gloves on. And that's something that we recommend. We recommend that you put nitrile gloves on when working with nylon powder. It's not toxic, but it could irritate your skin. And we also recommend when you're using the Fuse Sift to use an N95 mask. And we ask you to follow the guidelines provided in the manual. And we also recommend goggles as well. Sometimes, there is powder flying around, and it's good to be fully protected when using the system. But that's as much as it gets, in terms of health and safety. I do want to talk about service plans and what after-service sales looks like. So this is a much more professional system than what you've been used to. So this is something where you should have a service plan attached to it. The service plan allows us to provide you additional services such as annual preventative checkups. We also have priority phone and email support as well. And you can choose between the basic and the premium plan. The basic is done remotely with us, and then the premium plan is done on site. So people who are in the GTA or in the GVA will be able to take advantage of the premium plan. And finally, when I talk about service plans, the question for you is who is going to be administering the service, and That's shop3d. So our team, our technical team here and in Vancouver is trained and will be directly able to train you on site and also provide preventative maintenance and services as well. So that's something that's new. We're partnering with Formlabs in order to provide this after-sales service because it demands that premium support. So right now I want to get back to Felix. So we haven't seen enough about the Fuse One. So Felix, maybe you can take us through some of the components of the Fuse One system.
For sure. So I have everything kind of laid out, and that's almost everything that you do get with the Fuse One and the Fuse Sift. So for the Fuse One, you have three main components. So you have the build chamber over here, you have the powder, of course, and then you have the optical cassette. So these three things you're going to be touching and handling fairly often. So the build chamber, we have two, but the way you use it is, after you're done with the Fuse Sift, you would vacuum it up, make sure there's no used powder and no big particles on here. You would slide over to the Fuse One, open up the door, and then simply just slide it in right here. And then connect it to power. Now over here, I'm not going to take it out right now, but you do have the optical cassette. And that is very important because that is what the laser is passing through. And you are going to be handling this after every print. You're going to be inspecting this to make sure that there's no smudges or powder deposits on the surfaces, and then cleaning it up. So we have to here because we do print quite often, and we do need to have an optical cassette ready to go so that once we're done printing, we can slide in a new chamber and then slide in one of our treated optical cassettes. And the last thing that we have is, of course, the powder cartridge. So if you just have new powder, you fill it up in here and then slide it over to the hopper. But if you don't and you want to do the 30% to 70% ratio, you do it on the Fuse Sift. So it slides right down there, it will fill it up, and it does have a weight scale. So if you ever have like half a cartridge and you want to top it up, you could do that. And then on the side of the machine, we can't really see, you have a mixer that will rotate this cartridge so that all the components in here are mixed properly. Once that's done, you slide it over here, flip it over, and then undo this blade. The powder will fall in and fill up the chamber, and at this point, you're actually ready to go.
So Felix, I saw that when you were handling the cartridge, a little bit of powder dropped onto the floor. How do we handle something like that, when the powder goes where it's not supposed to?
Sure, that's a good question. So when the powder goes on the floor, and obviously it's not supposed to be there, make sure that you're not reusing that powder. Once it touches any of these surfaces, it's basically done for. But what you want to do is just grab your vacuum, and you can unplug it from the Sift, give it a quick vacuum, and you can enable it through the touchscreen interface on the Sift there, and then you're good to go. And that's important to do because the powder is slippery, so if somebody is not noticing the powder on the floor, they might slip and fall. So it's important to just right away get it over with, vacuum it up, and clean the area.
Awesome. And that vacuum that you're using, I understand it's a special vacuum for the Fuse One system, correct?
Yeah, it is. So it's actually for both the Fuse One and the Fuse Sift. And it's a special one because it's actually explosion proof. So vacuums do produce quite a bit of static, and that can be a little bit dangerous with powder because it can catch flames. And we are saying explosion proof, but with all the powder that gets sucked into that vacuum, it does accumulate over time. So this is an explosion proof vacuum that's rated for this application. And just to build a little bit more, you cannot use any shop vacs or household vacuums here because they're not rated for this application.
That's great, and that's all included in our package, and I understand that we have the high efficiency package. So we have some extras as well, like a stand and more chambers. Can you take us through some of the extra components that come with the high efficiency package?
Yeah, for sure. So kind of the basic package will come with one build chamber. You saw me slide it in here, but we actually have essentially two of everything, which is in the high efficiency plan. So we have two optical cassettes. Like I mentioned, you have one ready to go right after the print is done. And then we also have another build chamber that's ready to go once the build is done. So essentially the process is you take it out of here, you take it over to the Sift, put it in here, and then you'll have another build chamber ready to go as well as the optical cassette. We also have a couple of these cartridges that we can use to fill up and mix on the Sift so that we're always printing and we're minimizing our downtime.
So Felix, I saw that when you were opening the chamber that you had access to touchscreen. That's a pretty nice touchscreen on the Fuse. Can you show us the UI a little bit in terms of what you can access on that screen?
For sure. So once you send over a print, it will just come up on this main screen here, and you can click print from there. It will take you through some pre-flight checklists there, and we'll do that actually a little bit later. But what's great about this UI is that you can go over to your maintenance screen, and you actually don't have to remember to do any of these things because it will actually prompt you to do whatever item is on the checklist here. So for example, if 100 hours passed, we need to vacuum the powder, which means that we're going to open up the chamber and then vacuum the powder around some areas. And if you ever don't remember how to do things, like for example, if it's one of your first few times doing optical cassette cleaning, what you can do is just click on one of these items and it will take you through the right steps to do that cleaning. So you don't really have to remember, once you kind of know the basics of how to do it, eventually you won't need the screen, but it is there for you if you need it. Because some of these items, you do every 2,400 hours, and you might forget what that is and how to do it, so you do have a really nice UI there. What I also like about this is that it actually has a camera. So this is, it's kind of nice to see how the powder gets lasered, but what's special about this camera is it's actually a camera that has more of a purpose, so it's computer vision, right? So it will monitor every single layer that gets lased, and if there are any, warpage or any particles or something is basically not going according to what it's supposed to do, it will actually abort the print so that it can save you from just losing some powder, but sometimes it can actually save your printer from getting damaged.
Gotcha. Thanks for that great overview. And I love that camera because when it's printing, even though you can't see inside the printer, you can kind of see a time lapse of it happening in real time. So what a fantastic feature to have on the Fuse One. And since we have that high efficiency package, which is geared for you to consistently do run after run after run, I think it's a good time for us to go to Levi to talk a little bit about having the Fuse One system and what kind of investment, how you're going to recoup your investment through ROI. So Levi, can you take us through some cases on how we can get ROI from the Fuse One system?
Absolutely, Ken. So, I have a couple slides I put together just to kind of show you, in real time, more or less, how to calculate an efficient cost per part with our SLS system. So just as we get started here, I just want to go over a couple of quick definitions. I know we've run through this a little bit already, but just as a quick kind of reminder, right? Refresh rate, minimum percentage of new powder needed in the chamber for a new job. Pack density, ratio of fused powder over total powder. Pack density is a crucial component to get to the most efficient cost per part analysis you can with SLS. And we'll kind of walk through some examples today, one specifically with our nylon 12. So the first thing you want to do is obviously import that STL or OBJ, drop into a virtual Fuse One. From there, you want to hover over the specific details. You have three specific definitions there: total powder, fused powder, packing density. Again, here with the specific part we have, and right, just as an example, we're using a 2-inch diameter wrist unit. You have fused over unfused powder, total powder used, and of course, packing density. Something to keep in mind with the Fuse One, of course, is it will only fill powder up into the tallest layer height that you have. So whether you're packing the entire build volume or just one layer, it's only going to fill up to that amount of powder. So that's crucial when you start thinking about pack density. Again, one part, you're looking at a low packing density of about 12%. So if you calculate that out based on our nylon 12 at $99 per kilo, you're looking at a part roughly at $4, or if you do a complete 30% packing density, you're looking at $11. So the cost of this part is roughly $4 to $11. Again, you want to get that packing density 30% and above. So a great example of that is a full build volume of that 2-inch diameter wrist unit. And here you're still looking at a cost per part of roughly $4. But again, we've really increased the packing density to above 30% at 57%. So just something to keep in mind with regards to getting the most efficient cost per part with regards to our SLS Fuse One. I want to run through just a couple of quick examples as well. And obviously you can see one of our customers there, Rose, and just something he had to say specifically with regards to testing the Fuse One. And this is where I kind of like to just talk about kind of the history of the Fuse One specifically. So the Fuse One, we announced the launch, 3 years ago. it's kind of been this mythical creature. You know, the one thing I always like to reiterate is we've actually had the Fuse One out in the field, beta testing it since last year. So we've had tremendous feedback. It's been shipping since January. It's been an exciting machine, very reliable. And again, it's had more than a year's worth of field work behind it. And I know Ken, the rest of the Shop3d team, can attest to that. They've had a unit for a little while now. So again, it's a very reliable machine. And a lot of what our customers are saying is exactly that. It's a true one-for-one to what they're used to in the service bureaus, especially the high-end large industrial machines, but they're able to bring it in-house. You know, they're not having that long lead time. They're able to, you know, really adopt the workflow because it's just so easy to use. So there's a lot of really exciting things with regards to the SLS Fuse One. Again, we've been waiting 3 years to get it out there. It's more than what I actually imagined we'd launch with. It's been very, very exciting in terms of the feedback we've received. And so just a short little breakdown here on Nylon 12 versus Nylon 11. Again, Nylon 11 we just launched last month, but you know, think about impact resistance, snaps, clips, hinges when you're thinking Nylon 11. Nylon 12 obviously is going to give you great dimensional accuracy, but very economical in terms of prototyping. Back over to you, Ken.
Thanks so much, Levi. That's a great overview of that, and thank you for the examples that you've provided. So I do have a question for you, Levi, and you know it's in terms of kind of Nylon 11 and Nylon 12. Who is those types of materials best suited for? Could you give me an example of someone who would be great to use Nylon 11 versus Nylon 12, for example?
Yeah, so you know, I'm seeing a lot of Nylon 11. A lot of people in the orthosis market, they're very, very excited about that. Essentially, think about impact resistance. Anything associated to snaps, clips, hinges. That's what you're going to see Nylon 11 for. Nylon 12 tends to be the bread and butter still, though, of course, right? Nylon 12 has a range across a series of different applications, whether it's automotive, aerospace, just product development, consumer electronics, engineering in general. Nylon 12 roughly consists of, from our research, about 80% of the SLS market. So Nylon 12 is a really, it's going to be the majority of what we see out there.
Awesome, and we've had the pleasure of using Nylon 12, and it's been fantastic for us in almost any category and application that we have. So we can't wait to try Nylon 11 when it's available for us as well. So I want to jump over to pricing and availability for a little bit, because I think that's something that you've mentioned. Lead times have really dropped for the Fuse One. It used to be a long lead time, but now we're looking at just about 2 weeks for a Fuse One system. So that's tremendous. And we actually have several different packages available, pre-made packages. So on the low end, we have the Essentials package, which includes a machine, a fuse stand, a sift, a powder cartridge, and 18 kilograms of powder to start with, and 2 years of service, and you can choose between basic and premium service. And then we move on to the high efficiency package, which is the one that we've been talking about and using here in our showroom. And finally, we have the maximum throughput package, and that includes 2 Fuse Ones and 2 sifts. And I think this would be a great package if you're using 2 different types of powder, so you can have one system used in Nylon 12 and one system used in Nylon 11. So I think those are some pre-made packages that we have. And actually, you know what? I'm going to ask Felix a question. Felix, has anybody asked for packages outside of this, and can you customize a package for them?
Yeah, definitely. So these packages, they're kind of the go-to packages. So we have, kind of the starting ones, the middle one, and then the high throughput one. And if you did have anything in between, if you just needed, I don't know, two cartridges, 2 powder cartridges, that is, and only 1 build chamber, all that is customizable so that we can tailor a package that's fitting to your application.
Perfect. And you can also choose different service levels, whether it's basic or premium, and however many years of warranty and service for your Fuse package. And our Essentials package starts at about $45,000 Canadian, and then the maximum throughput starts at about 110,000 Canadian, with the middle high efficiency package that we have around $55,000. So that's kind of the rundown of the different packages available, and of course, again, we can customize it for you. I want to talk a little little bit about our sample program. So for those of you who have registered for our webinar, thank you so much for registering and joining us on this live webinar. You will be getting an email shortly from our marketing team, and they're going to be asking you about what you think about this webinar, things that you like or dislike or want to see more of, and as well how to access your free sample from us. We can either provide you a custom sample that we can print or a generic sample that we have on hand, and that will be included in the email for you, which will be sent out shortly afterward. So at this point, I want to jump back to Felix because I think it's really important when we talk about a professional system that software and hardware meld really well together. And Formlabs has been tremendous in doing that. Felix, can you tell us a little bit about Preform and how it works with the Fuse One?
For sure. So, Levi already touched on this, but Formlabs is all about making it super easy for the user. If you've never used the printers themselves, SLA, XLS, it's a quick learning curve. And it's the same thing with the software here. So I have Preform booted up here, and I kind of threw in one of our builds here, which is more of a service bureau type thing. So you have a whole bunch of different parts here, different sizes, and just in general, just the client needs these parts, and he doesn't really care how they're made and stuff like that. So what we've done is optimized it so that we're using the least amount of height in the build chamber, because the amount of powder that you use is a function of that. So if, for example, this, for example, is using about 1.2 kilograms, and we have a packing density of close to 30%, which is actually really good for a service bureau type job. And then if I, for some reason, wanted to print this part up here and I had more parts to fill up the chamber, you can see that right away this the amount of powder we're using, it actually jumps to 3 kilograms and our packing density drops. So what you really want to do is minimize the height to get the best packing density and also speed of printing and whatnot. So this is more of a service bureau type job, and I'm going to drag in something that's a little bit more representative of small batch production. Just give me 1 second. So there you go. That actually imported. I clicked the wrong button there, but let's actually re-import it. It's faster. So I'm going to throw that in and just open the project, not just imports. We're not going to save. There you go. So this is something that is more representative if you're doing small batch production just for yourself. Either you're prototyping something, or you just needed 1,000 of something, or in this case it would be around 1,000 to fill the entire chamber. But here again, we're pushing for that 30% efficiency, and while we can't print just these spacers, we can actually increase the efficiency by printing some random parts, or parts that can fit in these holes right here. That's what's the great thing about the SLS process, that you can really stack things in 3D, and it doesn't really care where you put your parts. So I think this is a great way to optimize efficiency here.
Thanks, Felix. And I want to ask you a question. For those who had just got their Fuse One system and they're not sure how to get that packing density, to 30% or over if they want to get as much efficiency as possible, what kind of support are they looking at in terms of getting that help to do that?
So number one, and Levi kind of touched on this already, Preform is a free software that anybody can download and play around with. You can simply just add a virtual printer, whether it's a Form 3, 3L, or the Fuse One, and kind of play around with it, see what you can do, drag some of your own STL or OBJ files in there. But if you just needed some help and you didn't know how to do it or what's the best orientation for parts, because there are some caveats there, you can just reach out to us, and send us the files. We'll optimize the chamber for you, do a ROI analysis for you, and kind of teach you the do's and don'ts.
Yeah, fantastic. And this is something that we're offering with the Fuse One with the service package, and that's because you get priority email and priority phone support as well. And so Felix and the rest of the technical team here could certainly help you in setting up your Fuse One for the most efficiency as possible. And Felix, I want to have another question for you. And when you bring up, the different materials to use for your prints, how do you distinguish what prints are good with nylon 11 and what prints are good with nylon 12? And the follow-up question to that would be, if I wanted to switch from nylon 11 to nylon 12, what's involved in that process?
Yeah, it's a great question. So nylon 12 and nylon 11, they're similar, they're still nylons, but there is a big difference, and Levi touched on it, where nylon 11 is made more for impact resistance and kind of repeated bending loads and things that need to flex a lot and that are not constantly in a rigid state. If you just need like a gear or something and you need it to be as rigid as possible, or a fixture, you're gonna go for nylon 12. But if you needed, some sort of casting for the arm, or a living hinge rather, you're gonna go for nylon 11 because it's not gonna fail compared to nylon 12 if you're gonna be constantly doing that repeated load on it. So that's the kind of the main difference there, and we actually do have a pretty good YouTube video coming about that. And then for the second part of the question, if I did want to switch between nylon 12, which we have here, to nylon 11, we haven't done it just yet ourselves, but the process is very simple. The machine is engineered, both the Fuse 1 and the Fuse Sift is engineered for, fairly quick compared to other machines, and easy materials changes. So really all you have to do, and I know it sounds a little bit daunting, but you open up the chamber, you try and purge out as much powder that you can out of it, and then clean it up. So all the areas have to be clean of the previous powder, in our case nylon 12, and once that is clean, we can actually load in our nylon 12. And we can do the same with the Fuse Sift. So while the process is not quick, it is easy because the machines are engineered for that. Back to you,
Hey,
Ken.
Felix, sorry, that's lost you there for a second. Thanks for that explanation. I do have a question about SLS in general, and that's about how does the Fuse 1 compare to other systems out there? Because you talked about ease of use, and it does seem super easy for me in comparison. Can you talk a little bit about what things are easier on the Fuse 1 versus some of the other solutions out there?
Yeah, I mean, the Fuse 1 fits in a little bit of a different spot in terms of, as an SLS machine. It's not going to be, if you're a service bureau, it's not going to be your main machine, but it's actually going to be a secondary machine for you. So you might have a bigger SLS machine, bigger volume, currently maybe more material capabilities, just more professional, more costly, maybe faster. But the Fuse 1 will fit right in basically. So you have that bigger machine for larger jobs and something that maybe makes sense for one company, but then you get a smaller job from a different company, and you're like, I can't really fit it on my EOS machine or something like that, right? So this is where the Fuse 1 comes in, and I think Levi can speak about this a little bit as well. I think we touched on it yesterday. Levi, what do you think there?
Just in terms of the ease of use, yeah, I would thoroughly agree with that. Right, it's a terrific complementary solution to any service bureau that has SLS in house, and then of course it's great for one-off production, and most importantly, it's modular. Right, so if you want to scale up your Fuse 1 production, you have a very affordable solution to do that with.
Great. So, another thing I've heard about, and this question might be for you, Felix, is in terms of the nitrogen purge. I believe we don't have to do that here with the Fuse 1, correct?
Labs, right? So traditionally with nylon 11, you actually have to condition the atmosphere inside of this chamber to print with nylon 11 for successful prints. But with the Fuse 1, you actually don't have to do that. So you don't have the added cost for that setup. Nitrogen is you do need to have some safety procedures there for nitrogen. So that's something that you don't need here. All you need is just load in the nylon 11 powder, set up your parts on preform, send it, and you're good to go. So this is a way to simplify the process, reduce errors, reduce downtime, and reduce cost in general, because A, you don't have to use nitrogen, so you don't have to buy it, and then you don't have to worry about the safety procedures about it, and everything that comes with that. So I think it's really a breakthrough when it comes to SLS 3D printing.
Awesome. And now I feel like I'm asking a lot of questions. So I think we should move on to our next section, which is Q&A. So for those of you who are attending, you can go ahead and type in your questions on the YouTube chat, and we'll try to get to it as soon as we can. The first question I have actually is a question that has been asked very, very often. And I will probably ask this of Felix. And the question is, do I have to fill the whole build chamber with powder in order to start a print?
No, you don't. So we actually touched on it a little bit. You can fill it up. You need to kind of minimize the height. If you have I don't know, 10 parts, and you can fit them in the smallest amount of space as possible, that will allow you to increase the packing efficiency and reduce both the printing time and then the cool down time, right? So you don't have to do that. But having said that, if you did fill up the entire chamber, so the entire 300 millimeters, that's always going to take around 48 hours to print. So you can really plan ahead if you have multiple jobs coming and you need to fill up the entire chamber every time. You can use preform. It will tell you exactly how long the print would take and also how long the cool down time is.
Thanks, Felix. The next question is from Justin, and I'm just reading this off the chat, and I think Levi would be able to answer this. The question is there any kind of warranty on the machine? And I think we touched on this before with service plans, but maybe you can give us a little bit more information about the service plan and the warranty.
How they work for sure. So the machines come with, so warranty is standard 1 year. And also the service plan is also standard 1 year. You can extend that. So let's say you get 2 years of a service plan. That also comes with 2 years of warranty, and that includes depending on the plan you get, that includes parts, troubleshooting, and labor. Again, depends on the plan you get, and that applies to both the Fuse 1 and the Fuse SIFT. There are also some components like the build chamber itself that has its own warranty. So if you did buy build chamber a little bit later down the line, the warranty actually starts from that date.
Awesome. So I'm going to move on to the next question, and it is also from Justin, and he's asking, what happens if you get powder on your hands and skin by accident?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's not a big deal. It's not really toxic to your skin. It is bad for you to inhale it, but if it does get on your skin, all you really got to do is go to your nearest sink, use some soap and water, get it off your skin, and you're good to go. So it's at most you're gonna get a little bit of a dry skin or irritation, but if you remove the powder right away from your hands or wherever it got on, you're gonna be okay.
Awesome. Okay, and then the last question that I see here is, what are some post-processing steps you need to take beyond the Fuse SIFT, if there are any?
Yeah, so I don't think we actually touched on the post-processing today. So let's go over a little bit about that. So once you finish with the Fuse 1, it goes over here. You have the cake. You do get a whole bunch of tools. This gets inside holes. You have smaller brushes. You have big brushes to remove, big chunks of powder. And then once you're done with that, actually, you can use the parts, but they are going to be a little bit powdery. But over here, I'm just going to grab a part. I do have parts that have been bead blasted, and maybe I can show it to that camera there. So these parts have been bead blasted and then washed in water, and this is really the extra step that you would want to take. So once you finish over there with the SIFT, you take it to your bead blasting machine, you use some glass media to get the very thin layer of kind of solid powder out of your parts. It doesn't really affect dimensional accuracy. In fact, it actually improves it, because it actually gets rid of that thin layer of powder that the Fuse 1 deposits on it or lasers around it to keep the dimensional accuracy tight. And then once you've done that, so once you've bead blasted, you're free to use these parts. They have this kind of dark gray color. You can dye these parts, paint them, and whatever you want to do depending on what type of finish you're looking for.
Thanks for that, Felix. And talking about post-processing, I just want to ask a question in terms of, let's say, talking about workflow. How much time should we have for post-processing if you're printing, like if, let's say you do a 24-hour print, how much time should we expect to spend on post-processing to get a good result?
Yeah, so that's, it would really depend. So just because it's a 24-hour print doesn't actually tell us too much about the actual parts, right? So if you have a 24-hour print, that might be 3 big parts inside the Fuse 1 chamber. And then you take them over to the SIFT over there, you get most of the powder out, and then you take them to the bead blasting machine. So 3 big parts, might take you about maybe 10 minutes over here, and then 10 minutes in the bead blasting machine. But if you printed, 1,000 smaller parts like those spacers that I showed, that's going to take a little bit longer. So you're going to have to handle each one of those spacers, get the most powder you can out of it so that you can reclaim it through the sifting process there. And then you're going to have to actually handle and touch each one of those spacers. So if you have 1,000 parts, you're going to take them to the bead blasting machine and spend maybe a minute on each one. So you got about, I'm exaggerating, but you're going to get about 1,000 minutes on those spacers. But there are ways to optimize that process. You know, you can put the smaller parts in a cage and kind of blast the entire cage. There are some automated process there. So it really depends on your application and what you have available and what you want to install.
Yeah, so that seems to be the theme. It depends on your application, and we tell people that, and sometimes they don't believe us, but it truly depends on your application. I have a question on YouTube from Luke, and he's asking, can we start by buying the printer only and then manually sift the powder?
Yeah, you can. I think I've been asked that before, but yes, you can. So you can buy just the printer and then use some sort of your own sifting process. You know, at the end of the day, what you have in there, and I know you can't really see, but underneath this kind of more thicker plate, you have a very fine mesh. Maybe you can zoom in? No, but it's okay. There's a very fine mesh, kind of what you would, I don't know, what you would use in like, I can't come up with an example, but it's a very fine mesh, and it just filters out, you know, the bigger particles that you get out of Fuse 1. And that is a very important thing to do. So if you can do that efficiently and you know in a reliable manner, you're going to be okay to reuse that powder. But again, I haven't tested it myself, and I think that Formlabs doesn't recommend it, just because there is a lot of human error there that can occur, and you know, cross-contamination with other stuff in the room. But I think I've seen some YouTube videos of people doing that kind of manually. So yes, in general, yes, you can just get the Fuse 1, do the sifting manually, and then later on maybe introduce the Fuse sift into your workflow to, you know, save time and just make it a little bit easier to use.
Yeah, and Jason on chat just reminded you, Felix, it's like sifting flour. So there's your example right there. Yeah. But I do want to mention, you know, Formlabs has spent a lot of time developing the sift. It's a big part of the reason why the whole system was delayed, because they want that great experience for you to have it sifting. If you don't have a very good workflow for the sift, first of all, it's going to get extremely messy for wherever you're doing it. And secondly, you're not going to be able to get that proper recycle rate, which the sift will allow you. So manually doing that is going to be probably a very intensive process. You're going to be spending a lot more time on post-processing, you know, without the entire sift there, since so much of that process is automated by the sift, as well as, you know, having the vacuum attach and pull powders into that filter as well. So just to keep in mind that is probably one of the best parts of the workflow, is that Formlabs has figured out how to provide that sift for you. And Felix, was there anything else you wanted to add in terms of that process? What would be missing if we didn't have the sift?
No, I think the other thing to consider is kind of, you know, health and safety. You know, if you're just doing it in your garage, for example, you don't have sort of this negative pressure that gets created by the Fuse sift to suck out, you know, the powder. For example, if we didn't have it and we were handling the powder inside this chamber, a lot of the powder would just kind of escape into the room and fill it up. And that, you know, when you have an entire build chamber full of powder that you have to sift, that can get a little bit overwhelming. You know, you have all that powder out. You got to then, you know, clean your garage every once in a while. So, and then other people can't use the garage, or they have to wear a mask. So there are some more consideration. It's not just, you know, the manual process. It's also the cleanup after, and just generally, you know, your health and safety.
Awesome. And so I think I got a couple more comments. One from Jason just saying inhaling the powder is not recommended. Exactly. And Luke says just to split the investment. And that makes a lot of sense as well. You know, if you want to get the Fuse first, start it, and then get the sift. But I do think in terms of workflow, it's very worth it to do that, just because the sift provides a very good process. But of course, you could always contact us if you need to do a run as well, and that's something that we can help you with. So I think that's all the questions that I see for now. So I definitely want to thank our guests. I want to thank Levi over from Formlabs for taking the time to come out and speak with us directly. It's great to hear from Formlabs directly, and to have the history of Levi, who joined the Formlabs team basically because of the Fuse. And thank you to Felix as well for providing all that technical information for us for the Fuse 1. My name is Ken from shop3d.ca. Thank you for joining us. For those of you who registered, you'll be getting an email shortly to get your sample print. And if you have any questions, you know how to reach out to us. Go on to our website, shop3d.ca, and contact us there. Thanks so much, everybody.